Hi, everyone. Welcome into the very first episode for Holy Harlots. My name is Mary Lisa. I'm an intuitive healer, a psychic, a sound therapist, and hopefully you're a priestess sister in guiding you through a life filled with pleasure. Holy Harlots is a space where the sacred meets the slutty, where the divine meets the incredible, the human, and where the sacred meets the wild and free. So, this is a process. This whole podcast is going to be designed to lead you towards this pleasure liberation. We're going to be focusing a lot on identifying how to make our life more fun, more creative, more scandalous, more exciting through pleasure. And so we're going to talk a lot about things like divine femininity, sacred sexuality, energy healing, tantra, how to use pain and actually turn it into pleasure. So I'm really glad that you're here with me. Holy Harlot is unapologetic pleasure. It's divine feminine power and noticing that erotic can be holy. And erotic is not always just about sex. You can live erotically throughout your day, even in the mundane. So I'm excited to explore that with you. We're going to be transmuting shame. We're going to be examining where in your body you hold all these old programmings and systems that say it's not okay to be sexy, it's narcissistic to feel hot, don't focus on yourself, be a giver first, like all of these conditioning patterns around specifically women, but also including men. By the way, I will be talking mostly to women on this podcast because I'm a woman, and I work with mostly women, so that's kind of what I'm good at. So I do want to get some men on this podcast as well because it's important to also create a space for them. And when we're talking about the moving through of pleasure, but also the balance of masculine and feminine, it can be really fun to explore that from a different perspective. So I've already recorded one episode where a really good friend of mine, Jackie, came on and we intended to talk about embodiment. Embodiment is another big one we're going to be exploring here. And we ended up talking a lot about sacred sex and how to come back home to your body, which increases intuition, increases sensation, and how that can lead to greater pleasure. So I'm excited to explore who all is going to be on this podcast, but first and foremost is you. You are on this podcast. You are listening, you are watching, and it's because you feel the calling to be a holy harlot. This word came to me, or this phrase came to me maybe about a year and a half ago. I've been a healer of sorts for over 10 years now. I've gone through different elements or paradigms of healing. I started in esoteric Reiki with Lauren Williamson. Then I went to biofield tuning with Eileen McCusick. And then Dr. Lauren Cielo taught me a lot of new psychic skills to enhance what was already there. So I've had a lot of teachers along the way. I've also been learning from afar from people like Leola from Talk Tantra to Me and Gina Tomhauser. She has many great books. And there is such a raw, untapped power inside of women. Like when you think about our body, we literally have a bundle of nerves, 8,000 strong, that have no other operation function besides pleasure. So our bodies were designed for pleasure, but what happens is we often are so far out of our body. We're operating mostly from heart chakra to crown chakra. And that means we're not accessing the lower chakras and the more sensual vibrations because somewhere along the way, We've been shamed out of our bodies. We've decided we don't like our bodies. Our bodies have turned against us. They're nasty. Menstruation is gross. Yonis, we don't want to talk about it. Da 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 da. And there's also this kind of balance in our culture of like, be a Mother Mary or look like a slut. Like there's this, we're being told so many different things. So here we're just gonna open it up for you so that you can decide what it means to be your wild feminine, to be your amazing human being, to live a life that is juicy. The way I live my life as an embodied woman may look different than you, but that doesn't make it any less valid, right? So when we talk a lot about generals on here, like general concepts, just take what feels good and run with it. The whole point of this podcast is to open up the playing field, to give you a new set of lenses so that you can choose what pleases you. I'm going to talk a lot about like what pleases me and my journey, and some of that you may feel like is not for you. Great. But be a pleasure researcher. What does please you? Find it, grab it, amplify it, and watch all of the pain, all of the disharmony within your body melt away. Now, this doesn't mean that we live our lives without dysfunction, right? Because we're meant to be human. We move through the escalations of different emotions and different things in our life. But what I guarantee you is through Holy Harlots, this podcast, or whether you work with me privately, you will find how difficult situations can still be pleasing. You will be, sorry, my dog is like chewing on his butt back there. So, um, you will find that breakup conversations can be so deeply juicy. You will find that vacuuming can be a space where get into your body. Like you're going to take the ordinary and make it magical. You're going to take the painful and make it pleasurable. That is the process and the promise. So I got on social media, mm, and like for the business a few years ago. And thankfully, it's really taken off. It's allowed me to make this my full-time practice. However, with that, there was a lot of shadow work involved. And this has all been such a beautiful development for me. But what I want to bring to you is that me creating this space, like I put so much resistance in front of it. I was scared. I was scared of being judged. I was scared of talking about pussy and yoni and womb and, the juicy life of a woman in front of people. And being on social media really opens you up for triggering people, especially when talking about this stuff. And so I have come across a lot of people who have said, wild things to me. And it took a process of probably about 2 years before I got the confidence enough to take my business in the direction of pleasure. And I tell that to you now because Holy Harlot is designed to help you let go of those fears and just do it anyway. Like what do you want to do that just seems so wild, so uncouth, but so creative and so amazing? When you tap into this inherent design within you and you just keep picking pleasure and pleasure and pleasure and pleasure, you will stumble across the thing that is yours. You're just on your divine path every time you choose pleasure. So Abraham Hicks talks about this, so does Bashar. They're like, if you don't know what to do, just find something to do in that moment that pleases you, even if it's just a little bit. If you're feeling so stressed out, if you're feeling so whacked out, and you just need to put on a 90s Spice Girls to dance, do that. That little moment will then shift you directly back onto your divine path, and you will not probably know how is dancing gonna make me successful, happy, abundant. Like that's the whole point. When you're inside of your body and you're listening, what do I want to do? And you make those little micro decisions each time you start to open your pathway a lot wider and brighter. So when I first channeled the name Holy Harlot, to me, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it was going to be. And I was like, I'm not going to start a podcast. That seems crazy. I don't want to talk about this stuff in front of people. What if my family sees it? Oh my God, she's going to be a slut. Like, all this worthiness, all this imposter syndrome was coming up. But every time I chose pleasure instead, it led me right to this moment. And it will continue to lead me down the path of my moment, of my moment, of my moment. And I want the same for you. Everyone that's going to be on this podcast wants the same for you. So I'm really glad that you're sitting here with me. And by the way, I did try to make a script and like read it to the camera. I'm not good at that, so you will hear me pause and say silly things and get really lost in my thoughts. But that's just my process. So I hope it works for you. I hope you're not thinking, oh my God, what a crazy. Actually, you know what? Go ahead. Think I'm a crazy person. Join me. Okay. So growing up, I I had this vivid memory of when I was 3 years old, I was binging. I locked myself in my Nana's room and I like hoarded all this candy and I was just eating, eating, eating till I got sick. That was a pivotal moment for me because my shame and my control started to dictate a lot of things in my life. I wouldn't say that I was pleasure led, through a lot, but I did have a great education in my schooling about the sociology of sex, about, talking to people about, you know, sacred sexuality and working through energy work. What I found is that most people are just starved for pleasure. Pleasure in their everyday lives, pleasure in how they dress, pleasure in how they treat their body, pleasure in how loud they laugh. There's so much inhibition, I hope that's a word, on people, just preventing them from being themselves, which actually creates a cycle in the nervous system where you downregulate pleasure receptors and you upregulate stress response. So at that point, your brain, your reticular activating system, it's like, okay, Mary Lisa is, you know, really stressed out. So all of this information that she's processing, it acts like a filter, the reticular activating. And it says, since she is stressed, we're only going to give her the stressful things because we're just feeding her the information that we already know that she wants. So you can see how you come in this cycle biologically, emotionally, and physically of just stress, of continuing to contract, of like tight muscles, hypertonic pelvic floor, like clenched jaw. And you continue to notice all the things that are stressful, and therefore, by energetic law, pulling more things to you that are stressful. We want to break you out of that cycle. And the way to do that is by coming back into your body and making those micro choices of pleasure, because you're going to begin to upregulate those pleasure receptors and downregulate the stress. And maybe there's a brain, someone who's educated in actual neurology out there that has better wording than me, but that's just my colloquial expression of what I know to be true. When we focus on something, our cells become addicted to it, our neurology becomes addicted to it, and thus will provide more opportunity for what we've conditioned it to respond to. So a lot of my work has been in frequency medicine, trying to help people tease open these problems, these stress responses, because when you listen to coherent sound, it helps you release a bunch of nitric oxide, which allows your vagus nerve to relax, which releases the contraction around all your organs. Like it's very biochemical, it's very physical, but that still is focusing on problem. And so when I switched some of the business model in Spirit Collective towards pleasure, which Holy Harlot is, what that is doing is in saying, instead of saying, let's focus on your problem and tease it open and tease it open, tease it open, which is potent, very potent. What if we just focused on the pleasure and used pleasure to transmute all of that? I had a really difficult experience recently in like a breakup conversation. And because of all the work that I've done and the practice that I've done, I found it so incredibly juicy. I'm like, oh, this sadness, oh, I can feel it in my body. It feels so good. And oh, it was so lovely. Like we both just care for each other so much, and it just didn't work out, yada, yada, yada. Like I found a pleasure in that. I know that that might sound very odd to people, but I promise you it's the lens that I choose to use that creates the magic in my life. It makes you more magnetic. You want to be magnetic, you want to attract more things that are for you and repel things that are not for you. Get into the juiciness of your emotion, sense into your body, and things become magnetic, flow. Your vortex just starts. I mean, my mom came by with my dad today and they were like, we're so proud of you for starting this podcast. Here's this new desktop computer that I'm sitting on. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even ask for that. But the things that just flow into my life now that I wouldn't have even conceived. I was talking on TikTok the other day how I manifested a Prada bag just by talking about it out loud twice. And this is all because of the work of the magnetism of pleasure. I promise. And so much more. Okay, so I think a pivotal moment that kind of cracked me open to this pleasure work was how thoroughly educated and practiced I was as an intuitive healer, holding space for people, holding space for people, breakthroughs, changes, escalations. People are like, thankfully, they're like, we love your sessions. They're so amazing. And I'm like, that's great. And then I would log off and then be like, what do I do now? When I'm not holding space for people, who am I? I was so addicted to creating a business. Stress, go. Micromanage myself. If you're not doing something, you're not anything. I just realized I wasn't happy. I realized I could be a lot more happy. I realized I could be a lot more in my body. I also noticed that there was certain numb points in my body. Like if I tried to focus on my womb space, I wasn't able to feel the tingle of the sensation of putting my consciousness there. And I'm like, oh, worked long enough in this field to know that that's a problem. But instead of seeing it as a problem, I saw it as an opportunity to connect to my womb space, to connect to my yoni, and to find the divine power there. Women naturally are bigger energy conductors than people in male bodies. We we're more spiritual. We're receiving a lot from spirit. However, we have pulled out of our bodies like we talked about earlier. So the process for a woman to find more joy, excitement, happiness in her life is to come back fully into the body. And that means making peace with the lower three chakras, the root, which is your yoni, your pussy, the sacral chakra, which is your womb, and your tummy, which is your solar plexus. And these are areas that typically are a little uncomfortable for most women, even some men. But men's job is to escalate themselves, right? To get closer to spirit. And our job is to get closer to body. And we'll go more into that on how the different energy flows in male and female and how they, perfectly blend and connect to each other, no matter if you're, what your sexual orientation is or your gender identity. These are about um, these are kind of spiritual ideas. So I would say that no one is 100% running feminine energy all the time, and the same goes for a man. Like we are vacillating at all times, but being in the body, right? Even if you're transgender, like whatever body you have, woman or male, that tells you kind of where your power lies. So we'll get into that a bit more as well. Okay. Yeah, so coming back into the body, right? It's coming back intuition. So I've been working a lot in the psychic space for a while, and psychic space, like you're going into people's fields and you're making quantum adjustments for them. But what I've noticed is if that person is out of body, then it's harder for them to integrate those psychic healings and adjustments. So think about this. Psychic is like making the request. Yes, please, God, Goddess, Spirit, I'll take this and that. And can you fill my money cup and then clear that karma for me? And like da 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 da. And Spirit says, received. And then you go about your day. But if you're not in your body, you will miss all the intuitive nudges. Intuitive nudges feel like, for some reason, I'm just going to call this friend. For some reason, I'm going to the grocery store. For some reason, I have this word, Holy Harlot, in my mind, right? It's not about knowing the end, it's about taking those steps. That's what intuition is. It's not the psychic awareness of what is to come. It's the living moment to moment so that you can receive to bring you to that moment to come. So in the current offerings that I have, biofield tuning, great for nervous system relaxation. It's kind of like rebooting. We clear a lot of old patterns and memories. It's great for trauma work. And then psychic healings are like those micro adjustments, to change probabilities for you, enhance certain things. But the Holy Harlot and pleasure coaching offerings, there's so much to it. It's all of that. It's the psychic, it's the biofield, it's the sound healing, but it's also like homework. Like this is what you need to be doing. These are your quantum codes for this week. What are you doing today that will bring you more fun? How much did you laugh today? What's the breath work process of? There, sacred embodiment. What emotion lives where? What does it need from you? Is it yours? Is it ancestral? Can it go? Can it be transmuted? It's so much deeper and all-encompassing. And it's such a beautiful space. Like my job is just to be the riverbed for your waters and guide you through to see how you already have all the tools. We just have to get you to kind of believe and take those first steps through all of those kind of energy work processes that I've just said. So let's kind of review. If anything triggered you in this podcast, you are welcome here. The point is that whatever triggers you, it's showing you what your next step towards healing is. It's showing you a current limitation in the way of your juiciness, your zestiness, your excitement, your happiness. So being triggered is always welcome. Being respectful is always necessary. Being open is also always necessary. And it's through these spaces where we talk about difficult subjects where we can all learn, including me. Oh my gosh, there's so much I still need to learn. However, being open, being receptive, listening to other people's views, that's what gets us to where we want to be. We want to be open and free and loving our neighbor no matter their differences. And we do that by loving ourselves first. You guessed it, through pleasure work. When you are pleased, other people around you can be pleased. One of my favorite things that I probably dedicate a whole um, episode about is that when a woman is turned off, when she's not connected to her pleasure, her womb space, or her yoni, and she's constantly giving, 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 pouring out of herself, um, it's actually a disservice to the people around her because women are meant to be turned on, right? We have this bundle of nerves that is just kind of all the only proof that I need, that our bodies are literally facilitators of creation and pleasure. We have a portal inside our body, for goodness sake. So when women can decentralize men, partners, society in their lives, and even choose themselves first, including mothers, then they have so much more to offer those people. When a woman decides, gosh, does this please me? No, I don't think so. So I'm going to request something that does or do something that does for when they choose their pleasure first, it turns back that light on and then that light shines all around them, and that's what their natural healing capability is. So if I'm turning myself on, I'm working on my pleasure work, I'm trying to have fun, I'm moving through all the emotions and even letting myself be sad or angry or jealous, and I'm just that magnetic, that turns on my light, makes me so much more powerful as a natural healer, no matter if you are a professional healer or not, like whether you work in business or you are a full-time parent or you're in real estate, being turned on is naturally healing for those around us. They are blessed by our light, spiritually, energetically. But if you turn that light off and you stop choosing yourself first, you are not as magnetic, as helpful, and as loving as you can be, or as all the people around you would benefit from. So, if you're ready to take the next step, you can try pleasure coaching, which is just like an hour, and we'll talk about the things and organize you towards pleasure and do some healing work for your pleasure. But the Holy Harlot 10-week immersion, that's where real change occurs because we're going to be sister priestesses together. I'll be with you every day, checking in with you, asking you questions, giving you quantum codes, and then you'll have a weekly 90-minute call where we crack open your pleasure, your priestesshood, your holy harlot. So just remember, your pleasure is holy, your body is wise, and your desire is sacred. And if you think that you have content that you would love to be interviewed for on this podcast, drop a comment. If you have a specific topic that you want us to get into, me to get into, also leave a comment. I'm so excited to have this space with you. And thank you for being here. A lot of you guys have seen me grown so much over the last few years and have been such an integral part in that. So with all my love and respect, we'll see you next time.